So, follow up from yesterday's video, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Show lightning, yes?
Yeah.
What do you reckon? That some people get pretty damn intelligent off of it, a lightning strike, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Makes them tap into something that is very hard to explain how they learnt those skills. Now, whether truthful or not, there's been a lot of study go into it, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And certain people that were struck by lightning get sort of certain amounts of gifts, yeah? Now, I wonder if that's ever happened with electric.
Mm-hmm.
Do you reckon? Anyway, which then takes you back when you go further back in history, right? And we say, well, when there's primitive life forms. So a big impact happened on the Earth with the moon, yes?
Mm-hmm.
So we could look at that as an event happened, and perhaps there was a clump that was very close. Now, wonder what the day-night cycle was.
Mm-hmm.
Day and night. Because that would have played a role, wouldn't it? Something would have hit. Now, either that would have slowed Earth down or it would have sped it up. And then if there's proximity, the moon is moving, what, 2 point something centimeters per year, isn't it?
Hmm.
Away, have you heard that?
Yeah,
I think that comes from NASA's laser, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So a laser, and it says, I don't know if it is 2.5 millimeters or centimeters a year per year. So you can reverse that in a simulation, can't you, as to how much more closer that could have been? Especially, that's probably where you get the theories from, because you go backwards, can't you? Once you have a piece of a puzzle, you can either go forwards or you go backwards, depending on which way. So it allows you to sort of get a rough idea that perhaps then you can backward piece the theory together, and that comes from moon missions.
Mm-hmm.
There we are. So moon missions and laser and the movement of the moon. So then we will look at Jupiter again, which is Voyager, yes. If I just put the V down, that's nice. And we see Jupiter, nice, great big red spot. And then Io, yes.
Okay.
Io's discharging, I think it's 3 million amps.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 million amps, Io brushes up against Jupiter and aggravates it and causes a lot of lightning strikes to hit in, which came from Voyager, so Voyager space probe. So once again, you've got these interesting things here that if then the moon was at proximity to the Earth, could it have created some sort of extra friction, especially around the equator? Humans apparently came from the equator, didn't they? Wasn't it? Studies done where they say that they came from Africa and spread. Now, whether that is wholeheartedly true, because I have heard that some new studies are suggesting that there's some in Norwegian, isn't it? Some heritage comes that way, this way, and every way else. Tectonic shifts as well. Something wiped out the dinosaurs. Are we sure it was a meteorite? It wasn't the moon? Either or. So with all of this, so we hit back to this fundamental fact here, that lightning. So if Io be correct, and that there is a discharge of 3 million amps, then we understand that that's colossal lightning strikes concentrated in an area, which would make Lightning Valley, if there is a place, look like a walk in the frickin' park. Seemed like a very small storm, really, wouldn't it? That's a constant, and on a rotation, and is it more closer to the equator? On Jupiter, so it's more bulged there anyway, isn't it? If there was any landmass, the Earth should be an oblate spheroid, really, technically, shouldn't it? Because everything's pulled at this particular area based on the moon. So that would aggravate more lightning. And then we see that there would have been life, but primitive, less life. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
No matter how primitive it is, something came together and expanded humanity. It seems like a very interesting thing, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now, whether they're single cells or anything else, do you think the energy coming in from lightning perhaps supercharges? Okay, it kills an awful lot, but it takes just that particular numbers game, a lottery ticket, of what life form how it all comes together. But if they're hit and zapped with lightning, does this change the bacteria, single cells, and anything else like that? And if it makes us intelligent in variables, you know, what can that do to anything smaller? Compared to animals. That's the lotteries thing, isn't it? Do you think intelligence, or perhaps the single cells, building blocks, we could call those? So the building blocks of life,
Yeah.
if they're struck with lightning, being smaller, can this create intelligent binding? And can it fuse certain things together? Group of bacteria in a different area, can it fuse it? Lightning fuses things together. That's an interesting phenomenon. Yes, we have fusion, nuclear reactions, blah, 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 blah. That's a fusion energy, but what about lightning? Lightning welds things together. We notice that. So what happens if we have a collection of building blocks of life that are hit with a discharge of energy that come together that makes it more intelligent? More intelligent meaning what? For humans, we all look at that as being able to play a skill. Tap into something. Whether the person was ever taught it or not, that's a different question entirely, isn't it? And by all accounts on this, no, I don't think they were. I don't think they ever had the... That's a knowing. It unlocks a knowing. Ah, that's interesting, that. And then going forwards with that, there would have been smaller life forms, so less life, and therefore more variables to hit into. And if they were hit repeatedly with this, or the increase of the electromagnetic field, we also see the reverse of this, that too much wipes things out. So how many didn't get going in this? And therefore it makes you ask the question about life itself, how it originates. If we could only shrink Jupiter down and move Io a little bit more closer by removing the gas. You know, this, when you have a small piece of the puzzle, you can either go backwards or you can go forwards. And then what's more, you can add in other life. So ET, you can add ET. What if ET works something out like this and are already advanced to planets, or let's say Sohos and star systems? And that gives you a large level of knowledge. And if they then understand this, which then unlocks this, and they know at the right ratios, that's what it's going to be all about, isn't it? The right spectrum. Not too hot, not too cold. Goldilocks zone. So just the right amount. Which we do have Goldilocks zones. Remember that? That's something, isn't it? Too much of something is a bad thing, and not enough of something is also a bad thing. We also live in a Goldilocks zone where we have the happy medium. We also got another Goldilocks zone being the moon, although that plays a factor in keeping the planet cool. Earth would be a lot hotter if it lost its moon. Because even though it seems like it's little bit by little bit, the eclipses and blocking out the star and doing this, this and this, and then altering our orbit slightly, that all factors into a Goldilocks zone, which is very interesting. So if you have the moon at the right ratio, with the right life forms at the right time, with the right formula going in, can you create intelligent life? Because at the end of the day, if it's already making people intelligent, and it's the variables, there's far more than people who die from it, okay? And some survive it, and when they do survive it, and it then gives you an enhancement to the area of the brain, which then means capability, and then after capability, then there's, you know, you can imagine this on something smaller. What type of knowledge would that be? And then where would the capabilities lie? What was it fused with? Lightning is very good at fusing things. If I ever wanted to fuse anything, I'd use lightning. That's an interesting thing, isn't it? And even lightning zaps to cauterize wounds, although perhaps not been developed, but still in the making, right? So if you were to be able to find all of these building blocks of life, and scientists are different building blocks of life, and if we were to put these together and hit the lightning into it, gentle bursts, many chambers, right? And that's what you would do if you had an abundance with you. You could play around with this, different ratios of lightning, electricity in these things. After all, too much lightning won't start your heart. It can stop it. But the right ratio at the right time brings a lot of people back to life. Right energy into the right mind, Perhaps, not saying anyone should ever go and try it, but still, it's something that we should consider. We also know that living under high energy power cables also is detrimental to the brain. Can cause things like tumors and different things like that. Too much energy, what does the body do with it? So, yeah, even with ET, I will take this off of you, it's all that. So even with ET, if you could understand all of these factors, could you then manipulate life going forwards? And is it an accident or is it a pattern? That's a different question entirely. So, yeah, I don't know. I would say so. And again, it's intelligent life. What would you do with this information? Would you experiment? The answer is yes. Experiments are conducted all the time. There's a lot going on here right now. I just gotta pause. Now, I often talk about ET. And that's only because we're not ET. That's an interesting thing, isn't it? We would say that we could be interterrestrial rather than extraterrestrial. However, all life forms, whether intelligent or not, would then begin to move away from the planet. It's just a numbers game. There's not enough resources to keep going on the planet, and therefore there will be push comes to shove, you have to leave. Then when you leave, that's then when things become not easier, because in the beginning it's arduous, it's slow and arduous. It's a bit like a steam train as opposed to a bullet train. It's got to start slow, and it begins to, and before you know it, then all of the resources and abundance is coming in, and you've got more than you need to do. And then, well, we've got all of this extra, what should we do with it? Well, maybe let's make some space, blah blah blah, make some modules, make some of this, use some of that. And then it allows your apparatus to, you can then expand into your apparatus into space, which then supports you. And then after that, what should we do? Should we use the star? Should we use the heat? Should we use this? Shall we go over there? Should we get the gases from here? Should we take them from there? Can we collect all of these? And again, it starts off arduous, and then before you know it, the train is, off it goes. And it's only a matter of time then that when you take those pieces, that any life forms that begin to run with these pieces, or we call them flukes, accidents, or whatever else you want to call it, or is it deliberate? There's another question. You can never be sure, can you? So is it accident or is it deliberate? Or design is probably a better word. So even with the lightning and electricity that can create intelligence, perhaps, and it also fuses things. So yeah, I'm going to draw it this way. Maybe that was with a Z. Not really sure. It doesn't matter. Maybe we're an S. So it also fuses things together. So again, that's also, technically it's like cloning things together, perhaps on a small scale. It binds things together. It also separates other things as well. So I think there's a give and take. So it can also defuse to then refuse. That's an interesting thing. That's a yin yang as well. So is it accident or is it by design? And this is when it gets me to start asking, is it by design? Is it by this? Is it by that? Why? Well, because if you were ET, yeah, now we could say that humans would say that ET is impossible. Okay, fair enough. Some people don't like that belief. Then put yourself in that. Can you become the ET? And the answer is yes. Can you become alien? All of the things that you look out for. Is there a spaceship? Is there this? Could they visit Earth? And that's a fundamentally interesting question, because what you really are asking is, if we saw other life forms, primitive or otherwise, on another body that's orbiting around a star system somewhere, what you're really saying is projection and reflection, all in one single sentence, really. Would you have a look at that? What would you do as a species if we all had to have a decision? I don't know. And you found some sort of life forms on a planet. Would you leave it? Would you go away from it? Would you look at it? Would you examine it? Would you study it? Well, there would be the fascination where it would overwhelm you because you would see yourself. Not really sure I spelled that correctly. I don't really care. So you would see yourself, reflection in this. And then would you help? Would you collect it? Would you study it? What would you do? What if it had resources or it, I don't know, language or anything else or a way of communicating that you never saw before? Would you incorporate it? Would you take it? Would you let them know or see you? What would you do? What if they were more aware or less aware? What if it was very primitive and you understood lightning, different things like that, creates intelligence, fuses things together? Would you do it? That's the next question. That's why the ET question is very important. But for me, it's never about looking out. It's also looking within as well. Could we do that? Yes. Okay. When someone says, or you hear a video and it says aliens, la-di-da, you're basically saying that this is paranoia because you know how capable you are of doing this yourself, becoming this. So with that, you then generate a little bit of fear and perhaps a little bit of excitement, a little bit of fear, a little bit of excitement. Could we be that? That's exciting. Could that happen to us? That could be fearful. Depends how you label it. For me, it works both ways, and I will see both of those aspects and tunnel into it. So, and then we'd have to ask, do they learn? Any ET, and this reflects back to ET. Well, yes, they would have to learn. Why? Because they would have to travel, because they would go from, this one's supposed to be Soho, so we should really write that like that. Anyway, would they go to star systems? Well, they would have to learn things in order to jump, a bit like lily pads, frogs jumping on lily pads. And then there's self-reflection of what you would do to your own species versus what anything else may have adapted. Not like for like, not perfect, not exactly the same, but similarities, I think, would definitely be the common thread. Interesting. What would you do with technology? Would you lace some stuff down to watch better, which again falls in with study? What would you do? See, these are all the questions that you ask, and then this helps you to look at better questions. Now, in some cases, this can make you more fearful, and in some cases, this can make you more determined. It all depends on which way you look at it and where you get fired up on that chemical response, I suppose. This doesn't scare me. It feels very natural, so it's not really a fear. It's more of curiosity. And anyway, we ask the questions backwards again. Interesting. So, if lightning is responsible for creating intelligence, and we understand that it fuses, and this happens on smaller, so when it's smaller, the evolving hasn't taken much to create this just yet. At what stage did this occur? As to what stage were we? So, if we can go back a little bit further, we could then say hermaphrodite, so we'll just put a H there, and then we have M and F for here, and then let's say if we have hermaphrodite, and then whatever we evolve from, some people believe primates, some people believe reptiles, doesn't really matter, so let's just draw something a little bit like this. There we are. So at what stage of our learning, and you know what else is interesting, our cells and everything in our body is all learning. It's learning without being taught. It's learning by trial and error. It's learning. It's a very interesting type of learning. There are multiple ways to learn. So to answer the question here, do you think something learns, ET learns? Well, it fits a pattern, because perhaps building blocks, perhaps next layer, these were all learning something in order to unlock the next stage. In order to unlock the next stage, in order to unlock the next stage. That poses another question. Who is that teacher? Who is that teacher? That's an interesting thing, isn't it? It's an interesting sort of thread. Then there's an exterior type of learning, which then creates a mind that's capable of learning. So now again, we would have to assume, is there some sort of learning process woven into the minds of this? Assuming that it has minds, thoughts, it knew to swim a path, you could say that this is interior learning. But again, that seems interesting, to be able to build the constructs for these to travel in the environment to make it from point A to point B in order to get a reaction, being birth, sperm, egg, incubation, birth, environment, incubation, so on, so on, so on, space, anything else, star system. So what is creating the constructs? So if we put the constructs, then there is an initial knowing inside all of these things. We could say mind, couldn't we? And the interesting thing is, there's another one that I'm going to draw here, is the being able to be, so one mind can tell another mind. That's a really interesting way of communicating, right? Now we have to do it verbally. Perhaps we could draw a picture. Perhaps I could sign it. Perhaps you hear it, or we can draw it with any of these types of things. And if I show someone else it, this is what I was thinking. Oh yeah, this is great. Oh yeah, I get this. That's a piece of information from one mind to another, which seems to resonate in the minds, and then that's what we will call teaching. Then yes, we can teach. And it's a lot of this understanding. So we have the inner workings of the mind, which would be what? In order to function the constructs to keep you going, you don't need any education in that. Your body already is taking care of all of that. Now, if it's responsible at the mind, that's one thing or another, that we can discuss that and peel that back later in a later video. So the mind seems to be dual in nature, doesn't it? It seems to be one thing is being taken care of in the body through cells and breaking this and doing that. Then we've got another type of knowing in the organs. The heart knows how to pump. You don't need any education in to do that. It's already pre-installed into us. And then we have the exterior, where we can utilize the mind, have a thought, process it out, write it down, show somebody else, and it sort of connects to their mind, and they're like, yes, or some people are like, no. Either or, there's still this outward sharing information, relay baton from one to the other to the other. And I just wonder if it was the same in this. Did this have a mind? One was internal. Did they share information to one another? Poses the question. Were they learning? Interesting. It seems very backwards that something would create a construct for us to navigate through. That's interesting. And to create an external knowing, an internal knowing, and a hidden knowing. Something that we just are not really paying much attention to, with how am I able to do this? How am I able to hold a pen? If it is a signal from the brain to the arm, that's an interesting thing. But there's already this knowing, already there. Was we taught it? We learnt it. Could we have learnt it? But there again, that only gets you so far. Because what about in the womb? Was there a knowing contributing in that? How do you know? How does it know how to do that? And then how does that knowing doesn't cross over into this knowing and doesn't cross over into this knowing? Why is there such the blockage between them? Why is it I can tap into this type of knowing, but I can't tap into the knowing of the body functions? Only certain parts of it if I want to move at will. It almost feels telekinetic in nature. So how and why is it not these three constructs into one? Why is it so separate? And then if I know something, is another part of me unaware of the process, learning from that learning? That's an interesting thing. So if I go and discover something, am I telling my structure it? So we know that this is a bad gas, la-di-da-di-da. And this is an interesting thing. This fascinates me quite a bit. So the body's evolution knowing. It's evolving and it knows something, but yet if I know something outside of that, where I could say to the evolution strand, hey, you know what? You could do this different. Perhaps if you went like this, like this, like this, and like this, and then the evolution is like, you know what? I never actually thought of, how come there's no tapping into this? How come we're all so separate? Is it a language barrier? Is there a pattern barrier? Or does it come back into the mind and says, I would need time to do that. However, I will help it so you can think about this. And is the knowing one way? Is there a block diode there? Am I making sense? It's hard to split this out. So the way the body functions. Yeah, I'm not really going to be great on spelling on this one. So function, and then we have the mind learning. And then what about the constructs? This is interesting. So all of those functions, I can't tap into it. No matter what we do, we just cannot tap into that and teach it to become the teacher for it. Regardless whether we use our eyes, nose, ears, mouth, anything, there's a barrier of communication, even if you think it. Does it change the evolution process? Perhaps not. But does this have a way of tapping into your mind? As opposed to it doing it, it can get what you perceive as you identified, and you being collective. So let's think about that in another way. I would know that we would need certain types of skin, a different type of this, rah-de-rah-de-rah, in order to travel into space. So with science and knowledge and learning and understanding all of that, if we all collectively sat there and sat down and thought about it, would our bodies begin to evolve to protect us in space without the need of a spacesuit? The answer is no. No, it won't. But yet, whatever this is this communicating with us in a weird way to say, but you know what? If you did this, and this, you would be able to do. And then there is a learning. So there's two types of learning, an internal and external type. One, and there's more than that, because there's also evolution. Evo, and then there is your mind learning, yes? And that's in you knowing. But what's amazing about this is you can teach others it. Amazing. And then there's these changes, and do we see changes across the species happening quite a lot of the time? Are we even aware of it? And then there is a common thread there as well, that there is this your body, but at the same time, is evolution doing everybody? With these evolutional changes all at the same time. That's an interesting thing, isn't it? And is it everybody? Then is there variables in that? There's a majority and then few variables, give or take. What happens if I keep it this way? What happens if I keep it that way? There seems to be a lot of this wisdom here and a lot of knowing. It's fascinating to understand that the body creates the constructs in order for things to travel through from one to the other. And that's why it doesn't matter if you're male or female, because both parts know one another without ever. This is why I always go to hermaphrodite, because both the male and the female have intimate knowledge about one another. And sure, it's a variable case, isn't it, where female to male to male to female. The only way that two of these separate factors, if they ever rose up from just male and female, it wouldn't make sense, because they know each other too well. Male and female. How do they know each other? But yet, if you introduce an animal, and do forgive me for putting this one in here, it's a bit morbid, but it helps me to narrow down the point. Can you cross your species with a female human with a male dog? And the answer is no. Now that shows you that there is a separation between the two. Something that is just not compatible, and one doesn't seem to know the other, for whatever reason that is. Now, if we look at that and then we go back to male and female, it knows. If it wasn't hermaphrodite, there would be the same, I don't know what this is, and therefore evolution or whatever, extinction would be sure thing. But if you came from a hermaphrodite and then evolved into male and female, this then helps me to fit in the missing piece of how does the male know the female. It's an interesting thing. What came first, the chicken or the egg, or the hermaphrodite, and then it evolved into one way or the other? That's the only way that I can look at that. So arguing about the chicken or the egg, it just leaves me on a loop. But I step back and say, what about hermaphrodite and then it evolved? They evolved to become the chicken and egg. From hermaphrodite to chicken and egg makes sense to me. That makes more sense. You know then, because you know what you are. And then eventually it divides. Now, can it divide again? What would that look like? Now, that would be an interesting thing. It would be like playing pass the parcel in a trifecta effect. Has the changes finished? What are those changes? And there again, this seems like the missing gap here because it doesn't know this. And if we try another animal and another animal and another animal, it just seems incompatible. And certain types of breeding, it stops as well, even if you take a liger, which is what, lion and tiger? Not sure. It doesn't work too well. It's almost like it doesn't know each other. Even in the cat species, there's yeah, but a sort of, I'm not sure about this one. But what happens if you could engineer a hermaphrodite of two of these species? Would it then evolve to go male and female, and then both of them would know each other? To be able to come together, to be able to make the sperm compatible with the egg, because the egg needs to know the sperm and the sperm needs to know the egg, which is what came first, the sperm or the egg? Trick question. It's hermaphrodite and it evolved, and therefore that's how it knew how to divide. If I divide it this way and that way, I can make this go like this one go in like this one's going to accept, okay then, all right, yeah, now I can build this one up like this, and now I have two versions of human. Nice. From one becomes two, and then perhaps there's going to be three. I think there is a third change. Anyway, that's me trying to tap into this evolutional learning, and it is very tricky to do so. It is incredibly tricky because we've got a lot of mental cages at play. But then what created the hermaphrodite? Well, then if we look at single cells, bacteria as well, these tend to clone. They're cloning. Cloning seems to be quite the language, isn't it? In dividing, each one then becomes a 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and this is the division line. I should really draw it different, which is also known as the cross. So we keep dividing this way. Now, if we say that that is one versus the other, it knows itself in order to replicate in this way. Not reproduce, replicate. That is clone. So cloning, very big possibility. Why does cloning not fall into the human species? That's an interesting thing. Now, also with this cloning, can I fuse two clones in this state together using electricity, lightning? If so, can I merge two of these together? And if so, and by some miracle they end up cloning again, you now have a new species. These two become one, and then for a while they'll become one until they collab together with a lot of other these clones, and then this might start to build the life forms. The life forms begin to be as one for a bit and then divide into two fractions, which would then be male and female. And this is how they know each other, and that's what creates the bridge. That's why it doesn't matter whether you are male or female. You're both from the same structure going back. And then I wonder what the next outcome is. To clone again. So cloning very successful here. What about here? This is why I'm obsessed. Obsessed is an understatement with cloning. ET, intelligence, electricity, and also this here. And collective, and evolved learning, your body, everybody, and you learn yourself, and you put it out to other people, and they learn, from you, and then that becomes collective as well, which is very interesting to me. And then there's something else that is rising up in this apparatus, which is then the universal strand 2, which again hits into a 3. There are multiple layers to this, by the way. Many, many layers. So, I mean, we can even hit up to 4. So in a few of the other videos, I drew the pyramid and different things like this as a process, and a process to go from one to the other. I think in this one it sits around 4, and then could even be 8. And then could even be 16, and so forth and so on. So it seems to fit in patterns of 4, although 3 get you there. And it gets more and more tricky to try and then isolate all of these as to where did we come from. Now that's interesting. Even if you were to work it out and find out where you come from and how it all came to be, but still, it may answer a few questions, but it also opens a new can of worms for more questions to be asked. Now, and then is this all accidental? The universe did this all accidentally, and it doesn't seem like it, because there seems to be purpose to the pattern, and it doesn't seem to be purposeless. And is our mind a evolving process from the inner evolution in us? That if we evolve to have this outer experience, and what's faster, internal evolution or external evolution? Now here's the difference, right? Internal evolution means that you'll be trapped on your planet. This is a difference with intelligence. You become stuck on your planet. Okay? Without this ability to think, you would also become trapped on your planet. That's how we would look at animals. It doesn't mean that it's unlikely, but means it's not forbidden that animals could never unlock this intelligence, but it's more than unlikely at this stage. Now, whether that is because we got a head start and they're more here with that change, but we're more here because we've excelled in intel. Now, internal evolution is where it all happens bit by bit. Perhaps the heart and lungs change over time and go from male to female over time, but yet humans now, with this evolved evolution, which is what we could call it, if we look at it that way, evolution, doing everything for the animals and making the bed for it, but evolution then might have more of an awareness. Extinction. How does it know that if it's never gone extinct before? That's the bit, that's the knowing that sort of misses the mark on a lot of things. Therefore, has it ever truly been extinct, or has it been suspended in animation? Perhaps it landed on this particular planet and other planets and different things before it come to this planet, and it was broken apart. And it had to go into suspended animation for that particular time and then build again and again. So this could be the only reason why it knows extinction. And then to develop a mind in a body, and then it makes you wonder whether we're extended from animals too. So if it gives us the capability to do something about animals' fate, which we could take them up into space too, and external evolution is just that. Can we preserve it? And what is its goal at the end of this road? So it's obviously on a journey. What is that journey? Well, I can only reach it towards eternal life. The only way that this goes forwards for me is eternity, but you have to work with it. And therefore, how many other variables of this exploding into other, if all of these things come together primitively, a meteorite hits another planet or the star explodes and these shards fly out into space. And that means there's a variable over there, which then factors me back into ET being quite abundant, although very rare, but more abundant than we first perceive it to be. Look on the planet. Many different types. It only needs one of those variables to basically start hitting the mark and surviving the planet. Then external evolution starts taking a place. So we look at space and we think that is inhospitable for humans to go there. However, internal evolution takes charge of the brain and circuitry and starts taking in the environment, and then it shows how aware it is. It's incredibly aware. It seems to be aware of an awful lot of stuff around, and what's more, it knows what to do with these tools, let's say. So internally, the evolution might be too slow to get you space ready. It's probably been trying to conquer that for a long time. There again, ask yourself the question, how does it know space? Must have traveled it. It's too much knowing here for this to be coincidence. It knows an awful lot. How did it know to get towards the equator? Did it make its way there? Bacteria is an interesting thing. Even in cloning from one to the other, what we perceive as one is dead, the other one's alive. There is movement, although it seems very minute and you can barely notice it. Bacteria colonizates in a very, very quick way. And if it begins to die, after it, it's moving. This is moving. Trees also use this. This is fascinating. Trees also do this too. It's a very strange thing. Bit by bit, even when they're falling and clone and resprout and that tree falls, they're moving. Slowly but surely, they begin to move. Bit like penguins, just much more slower. If we could speed it up through time, I think we would see it. So internal evolution is not enough to conquer space. So did it have to evolve to create eyes, ears, sensors, and everything else to bring that in, and thought? And then we look at space and go, it's like we're evolution with legs and a mind and an awareness. Interesting. And then we can look at space and go, what do we need in order to do that? And then we get thinking, and then you create a space suit, pressurized suit. Does it work? Yeah, it's working. You've just now conquered space. In your own skin, inside a new skin that you've made from the environment. That's interesting. Now, I often wonder what will happen with this, because it does evolve. If you go up a mountain for long enough and stay there for long periods of time, you are able to take the altitude. I'm almost sure of it, that evolution can deal with those types of things. In a pressurized environment in this space, what is this stuff that seems invisible to us, but seems to wipe us out most of the time or makes us shut down? Another thing that we've got that's really unique is hibernation. We don't like hibernating. We've come a long way from not hibernating, although we do go inside houses, but we don't hibernate, not truly. Most of the other animals do. And again, this shows that we don't like it. Does evolution like it? No, because that's slow. If you think about it, if evolution has to keep shutting down because of there's no optimal climate to operate in, then you would understand then that for, let's say 6 to 4 months of the year, evolution gets a chance to awaken and begin to expand. 4 months of a year, that's not a lot. What happens if you could get 12 months? What happens if you then beat famine and starving and everything else? That's even longer, isn't it? Food supply. Again, this is very interesting for me. I love this. Anyway, so if you were ET with all of this and you start tapping into this, I'm going to go into this in another video. It's just, I just want to touch upon it just roundabout now. Have you ever thought of that? Have you ever considered that we are external? We have more of an awareness, but is it accelerating us, or is it accelerating the evolutional strand? And is the evolutional strand then identified as individual? Which is interesting. And then what's the eureka? We expand to the ends of the universe. And again, it knows how to remake you because it has a very great memory, a very long memory. And then where is it storing this information? Because we often associate memory with, brain cells and different things like that. But there seems to be this sort of knowing. Interesting. Just making sure they're still going. I had it dodong. So where does it store this memory? Where does that knowing come from? Where is it stored? Where is its database? And again, if someone struck by lightning has intel to know how to play a piano, where did you get that info from? What database has stored this? So yes, we could say God and everything else and spirituality and all of that sort of stuff. It neatly fits. It neatly fits. And then for the reason for it to enhance memory, yeah, that's interesting, that is. But what and where is it putting this into? Is it creating ghost files? Can it access these ghost files? I mean, that's an interesting thing. If you make it to the end and you've expanded enough and it took all of these humans to do so, do you think there would be a place for all of these humans? Which the answer would be yes. Then could it, if you've worked with it as opposed to against it, could it unlock all of your bloodline? All of it. The ones that are gone, the ones that are missing in tragedy, can it go backwards and unlock it? Now, that's an interesting question in itself, because then each version of now selflessly is relying on the future to not stagnate and to reach a certain milestone. And if you don't, you don't. If there is other ET out there and it's worked with others and it's made this evolution with others, another thing is, if we've ever found heaven, it would be small, very small, but incredibly, incredibly intelligent, incredibly compact. But for how small it is, it makes up to being something very powerful. If we want to look at heaven, spirituality, and anything else, it would be very small. Here's something. Resources. Yeah, this is one I was playing with. Maybe you can see that. So resources are this big. The rest of it around, you should really draw that in blue, is humans compared to resources. The resources are the black circle, the smaller one here. Now there are two types that I can create abundance. One is to increase, and two is to decrease. If we shrunk humanity down, just think about that for a second. If we were able to shrink humanity down to the size of this red pen, all of this outside here where the blue is, that's humanity. The black is resources. At this ratio, you would understand that we would deplete those resources very quickly and would need to increase it, which is arduous. But thinking smart meant that you could shrink your population down to this, which then, by contrast, in this new graph, we now see resources as this and humans as this. And then the smaller that you could go and compact all of that data, this is why I'm fascinated with cloning. Can you shrink? Why would you need to be big? That would be the question. Why would you need to be really tall and massive? If you could control how we could compact that. And then I wonder about intelligence. If the brain is more compact, is there more intelligence? Do things work a bit better because it's smaller? We understand this with technology, right? The bulkier the technology, the slower it seems to be, and the smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, the more we're able to get more stuff through, more data, more processor. It's now shrinking even further, even further, even further. If we can do this with that and the information that flows through this, shorter distances to travel, X, Y, Z, can we compact a human species? And if we were making clones, universe is already doing it, then can we shrink ourselves down? If we were to shrink ourselves down, what are the benefits? Less food. That means food extends. You can create abundance by not shifting your perspective. No. If you can make cloning and you can make things more and more smaller, I mean, you can stay on a planet a little bit longer. What about breathing? Would we be using the same amount of oxygen? That's another question. Yeah, we'll cut around some of this. Well, we don't need that much muscle to hold up this. Keep the brains nice and big. You would shrink yourselves down. You may be small, but you are incredibly mighty. Wouldn't you think about that? Packing all of your knowing and existence and everything else, the brain perhaps would be a bit bigger, into the size of a kid. Still have the same capabilities and everything else. Same thought process, just compact. How many more humans can you get into a planet? How many more humans can you get into, especially if the numbers are going to expand? But if you were decreasing the size proportion each time it was expanding, that's small but very mighty. It's an interesting thing to think about, isn't it? And by comparison, a universe that seems pretty damn big, well, if we expand beyond those ratios, those will be a very small amount of resources. But if we shrunk ourselves down, even a little can seem like a lot. So any life forms that I think would ever get to this would shrink themselves down very small indeed. And that would be interesting, wouldn't it? Could you imagine a life-size, I don't know, a freaking giant-size humanoid that's made out of robotics, but with a very small, very, very tiny life form in it? And then how much more safer are you in that? Again, explosions might seem colossal. Could you imagine that, though, to be able to expand yourself and shrink yourself depending on the situation, what it demands? Massive explosion, quickly explode yourself in growth, if you could do it. I mean, again, and it starts with clones, and then it starts to shrink the technology, and then you can have it on you, and it can have a sensor around you that if there's a massive explosion that's going to wipe you out, it quickly expands you, and it then becomes like a match being stroke against a box. But again, if you were really small, the size of a fruit fly, and a match is going to, that's enough to engulf you. But compared to a large human, it was like a photon hitting the skin. Anyway, so sort of things like this is one thing that I do ask. Is it possible? And I think it is, because of the minute that then expands big. Does it need to go big in order to sort of sort us out, our bodies, and get it all adjusted, and then we begin to shrink back down again, small and mighty? And then how much more of that life form can you spread across a planet? Interesting. That is very interesting. And then think about the technology that you could make if you could expand yourself, your size, to being a real giant. But if you could shrink yourself to very small, could you get inside a larger body? That's an interesting thing, isn't it? And then how small could you be? Could you get inside a body? That's the thing of someone who is normal size. All right, imagine this as a doctor. I'm just going to shrink ourselves, going in here, and then whoop, in it goes. I see the problem from inside. You get intimate knowledge this way, wouldn't you? That would be an interesting thing. And then if you could shrink a planet or expand a planet, you don't need to expand the planet. You just shrink yourselves or expand yourselves. Interesting. So, yeah, and then how much more safer are you to anything that's bigger? Yeah, that's another question entirely. And then what's the smallest you can be versus what's the largest you can be? That's an interesting thing. Very interesting. So yeah, is evolution expanding us up, separating us in order to learn, to then be able to come back together, to then be able to shrink back down? Does that make it more potent? Has it been doing this for a very long time? Coming together and then breaking apart, coming together and breaking apart. This is one that led me on to the understanding that life forms become more and more intelligent the more and more towards the end of this cycling process happens, because there's more information. Sure, on one planet you're only going to get X amount of summers, so that's 4 months times your life expectancy on the planet from here to extinction, let's say, of the planet. And then you break apart, and perhaps these little shards go elsewhere. Then times that by another planet that it rendezvous with. Okay, perhaps this one's got larger seasons or less seasons. Even still, it's now accumulated. Okay, if the Earth is only going to last for point A to point B and reach extinction, and it shrinks back down, but the little building blocks, perhaps single cells, then land on another planet. This time from here to here, let's just say we're going to give that a 50. Might be the end of us, but not this process. And then it lands on another planet for another 50, and then another 50. Each time learning, blowing itself up, not in that way, expanding itself and then contracting. A bit like the universe, right? Everything seems to work in these patterns. So the universe seems to, we say singularity, I don't agree with that necessarily, but still appreciate it nonetheless. But the universe seems to expand and contract, a bit like breathing in essence. It's almost like breathing. With that process, I mean, coming together, processing this way, life forms seem to explode up in growth, sort of go extinct, and then expand elsewhere, and then it's a very nice pattern, actually. Each one of these intensifies the information, evolves the evolutional process. Wherever this knowing is, tapping into that would be something, wouldn't it? And it seems to be storing knowledge somewhere that it seems to tap into. Each time the life forms increase, and if it is about lightning and different things like that, we seem to see a commonality. Jupiters and moons seem to get very close to their host planet. Sometimes they smack into it, not enough to break it apart, but enough to cause the lightning strikes that are needed. That is quite common, more common than anything else. So it seems to be a process. And there seems to be lightning on quite a few of the planets. Even Mars has it. I mean, that's another variable. That's interesting. Does Venus? It probably does. Earth definitely does. Jupiter definitely does. And now, I mean, we're looking at that and thinking, wow, 4 planets already just off the top of the head have this. And some say that Neptune has this too. Something hit Uranus very hard. I'm pretty sure this caused lightning as well and caused things to fuse together in the process. This won't happen on a star. This is another periodic table altogether. To me, this is another periodic table, but in the structure of life. And on each of these events, then it's more likely that these are going to fuse together and begin to rise up as life forms. Therefore, ET becomes more common than rare. And so does the information, gets more and more and more compact each time. And it seems to hack into this knowing. What is this knowing? What is that database? Where the hell is it storing that info? In itself? Interesting. Then it seems too small. Then we don't understand data very well. Because how did someone that got electrocuted learn how to play a piano fluently? How did other people that did that learn how to come back and be mathematicians? That is an interesting thing. That's very interesting. That's fascinating. On all of these flukes, and yes, a lot of people die during this process, don't get me wrong, but it's the variables, right? Constant amount of people will die from it, the expected ratio. And then there's a variable where some people will have that and experience intelligence, and some people will experience that the opposite side, where it wasn't quite enough and it perhaps diminishes the mind. One diminishes, one excels, but constant and more regular, these ones are usually the ones that completely die from it. So it's a variable factor, but overall, something is hacking in more to something, and something else in this process is eliminating it, and something else is preventing it completely. Majority of it is being prevented. That's interesting. And then, if you come across other life forms where you saw this, the experiment would be as follows. Would you test it? Artificial lightning strikes there. Nikola Tesla was fascinated with lightning. That machine that he made, I can't remember what it's called now. I don't even know if it's known as a machine, where the big lightning bolts were across. I thought that was beautiful. Relevance for that is not really manifested itself just yet. But I think as we go on, that it begins to materialize from what that is. Perhaps he didn't know why he was building that. Perhaps he just liked the look of it. Perhaps it was to send energy across the... Maybe it was all of these things. Or it could possibly have been because it was a key for a later date, that his specific role was to put this in, but he wasn't fully aware of it, perhaps, until later on. And you pick up this process, Edison creating light didn't just create light. No, the light was already created before Edison. And if all of those things that precede him, after and before him, then, yeah, he saw something, starlights from hunter-gatherer, seeing stars, sun, this, darkness, fireflies, different things like that. No, who knows? Lava. And it processed through the time, and each one held it and shared the knowledge. Each one held it, shared the knowledge, and then you start to create bulbs, which then we could say candles, oil lamps, different things like that. This is the whole process from start to finish. And even then, even after Edison, it led on to the invention of the SMD, LED, and we can keep on going, and it could possibly have led on to the fusion process. So Louis the Great, I think it was, and different things like that. And it also comes from the old torches where they wrapped them in fabric and dipped them in and lit them, the torches. Even this process led on to Edison looking at that thinking, I wonder if we can make it from this. I wonder if we could do it from that. So where did his insight come from? Part of it's him. Part of it is the stuff that came before him. He walks on the shoulders of giants. I'm pretty sure that if he was here now, he'd probably agree, although speaking for you. The fact is, all of those things came together at the right moment and converged with Edison to just maneuver forwards, and then his moment passes and he died, and then somebody else comes along and they're like, oh, we can do this, this, and this. look at this, we made this. And the journey will keep going. And it also led to the evolution and revelation of cameras and different things like that, and being able to see different spectrum of light. All of this came from the invention of the light bulb. Interesting, really. Edison was just a pivotal point on that then there was evolution could go this way of the different types of light, which I think Tesla played a role in that too. Different gases in tubes create different color of light, which I think he got from the Northern Lights. I'm not 100%, but again, preceding that date, the people passing this knowledge around, going and traveling, all of those people that brought that info back, that then could have led to Tesla doing this, and this, Edison to doing his bit, and now it goes this way. And then cameras go this way, and then being able to see UV light goes this way, and then we also probably will start to move this way for more efficient bulbs, SMD, CMDs, chips, blah blah blah, and it moves and it keeps going. And yeah, and the invention of the camera is parallel to this, perhaps TVs, who knows what came first. So yeah, these are all sort of those moments that lead to monumental moments going forwards. I think is the pattern, that it's moving us somewhere. And I don't think that any of us really know why we do the things that we do, whether genius or not. We just seem to be doing things because it feels like something wants us to do those things. And when we begin to do those things, does it come for our benefit? And sometimes, a lot of the time, this answer is yes. Although at the time, perhaps Tesla was planning on moving energy this way, but yet some of that stuff that he's made had the invention of, well, going forwards, that invention will become really, really apparent. And then it will make people in those moments look back at Tesla and think, how the fuck did you know that? Well, it's a collection of this, and this. Lightning was the main teacher, so therefore the planet was teaching you, and therefore this had a benefit to mix it in with this and life forms. And when we mix all of this together, it's almost like we're doing what has already been done, but we're now becoming aware of why it did that, sort of. Yeah, near enough. So yeah, and then with these different variables that go in different directions after a star explodes and these things shut down, X, Y, and Z. These, how far along are these? What do these know? How more advanced are they? And the more this process continues, I think the more and more enhanced and intelligent life will become. Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. Whole process, all of that comes from lightning. There you are. So I'm going to leave it there, because if not, I will probably go around again the clock. And yeah, some things I'm just not there, some things I'm getting there with. And hey, take it with a pinch of salt, grain of sand, anything you want. It either is or it isn't. If not, it just makes some very interesting scribbles. Yeah, I like that too. So yeah, what's your opinion on that? Lightning seems to be abundant, seems to be everywhere. Lots of things coming together. Clones. Clones are one thing. Clone, clone, clone. How do they evolve? How does this evolve? And also ice ages and hot ages. They also play a role in impacting the building blocks. And also other conditions, right? And we start to look that there are some of these things that are needed. Lightning creates ozone. It's great for atmospheric. Mars has lightning. It definitely does. Dust devil and all the rest of it happens. Jupiter has it. Jupiter, if there is any life on Jupiter. Or if you can get down far enough into Jupiter, I'm pretty sure with Io cooking things up, something's going on. Yeah, so if we could shrink Jupiter's atmosphere, which it sounds complex, but really it is not. It is, you could easily do it. You have to breach the atmosphere. I don't know if I want to go into that. I'll probably leave that for another video, but even still, you can collapse an atmosphere in multiple ways to do it. And getting it at the right ratio. And then if you were able to add in a little bit of oxygen in there, some of it's going to bind under pressure anyway to water, to liquids. Plus with some lightning strikes in there from Io, move that closer. I wonder what would cook up. And again, I'm already doing this. I'm not ET. Not in this way. I am on a planet orbiting around with humans and different things like that. So, but you can think ET, can't you? I would bounce from one to another. That would be a happy thing to do. Teaching. Interesting. Right, yeah, I'm going to leave it there, because if not, we're going to leave those into other videos, I think. Maybe I won't. Who knows? But there you are. It is what it is. Toodle pips.